Well, it's really interesting when you talk to people or listen to people, how many people who take psychedelics have cartoon-like encounters with beings, or and you say, well, gee, this is weird. Cartoons only go back to 1920 or 15 or something. How weird that such an out there technical phenomenon could just grab a whole section of human psychology and camp there with that kind of tenacity. And to me, that indicates it has some kind of archetypal claim on that territory, and a claim which it can only continue to tighten over time.
Have you ever seen that Scott McCloud book, Understanding Comics?
No.
Oh, that's worthwhile.
Is that a good
Yes,
one?
it's really worthwhile. Very good. I mean, it's just sort of getting at a grammar. You know, a lot of cartoonists disagree with them. They're a very irascible lot, and a lot of comic people are like, no, it's shit. But it's a very interesting attempt to use the form itself to talk about the specifics of the form. I mean, it's really about comic art, but it applies to some of these issues of animation and cartooning.
Well, the great genius of Disney, I mean, Disney is my idea beyond Edison or Ford or anybody of what we really mean by an American genius, because he had mice who wear gloves living inside his head, but he was able to create a mechanical technology to show people these mice. So instead of just being put quietly away by his brother or something like that, he said, no, you don't understand. Money. This is worth money. If we can show people these glove-wearing mice and talking ducks and all this stuff. And then he was sufficiently a true American Yankee genius that he saw how to take a flip book and put it on celluloid and do all that. Yeah, I think Disney is a very, very far out person. I mean, he went to the Platonic ideas and came back with, baskets full of them, and released them in American towns and cities, and did very well.
I mean, animation is a great place to see the reflection of things that are happening in the culture at large.
And certain people take it to incredible heights. Have you seen, do you know that animation called Asparagus? You should check it out. It's about 20, maybe it's 15 or 20 years old, but it's it's very highly detailed, as realistic as a Van Eyck painting, and totally surreal. And there's also, do you know that one by Sally Cruikshank called Quasi at the Quackadero? That's a DMT extravagance, a carnival, basically a cartoon about a carnival, but it's a carnival crazy enough to convince you should go take drugs, basically. And Max Fleischer was a genius, and all these people.
Fleischer was great. I mean, I think Fleischer is the true origin of underground comics. I think that you find the most pregnant images of a certain kind of seedy, like the way that our Crumb presents a certain kind of seediness and sort of failure of the bodies and spaces, and yet that's infused with a kind of magical eye. So you really have that both in Fleischer. I mean, you really have the mania of the Betty Boop, but also a certain real kind of quotidian, almost proletarian graininess to these characters.
Yeah,
it's very immigrant.
It would be very hard to imagine postmodernity without Crumb's input. I mean, I consider him an absolute psychedelic genius. Very few people have had the influence without the karma that Crumb had. He basically did all that stuff, sold the drawings, and moved to a chateau in southern France and called it quits, and got away with those moves.